small like this, and you just fold the remaining part like you would normally fold a three-loop saw blade. So, hold on. There we go. All right. And I did this 100 times the other day.
People are watching you now, that makes a difference.
It's really easy.
It's really easy, yeah. Normally it's, geez. Sorry about this.
No pressure.
Come on.
Let's take this 3-loop one.
Yeah. Let's
At the next meeting.
at the next meeting I'll have it.
Come back and see how it moves out.
There we go. Anyway. All right.
Nothing to it.
Little humor for the day. So. All right. What? No. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. If you want to practice on this.
Okay. For today's workshop, we have our own Ross Barnes and Jerry Trujillo with us right here. Okay. Ross Barnes received his BA in Industrial Arts from Adams State College and his master's degree in Industrial Education from UNM. After 10 years of teaching and 12 years as a self-employed contractor, Ross went to work for the Los Alamos National Laboratory. Ross and Barb retired from their respective jobs about 11 years ago. Actually, it's about 12 now, isn't it? Yeah. 13?
I'll have to ask my wife. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. And bought 11 acres of land where they designed and built their dream home. And he points out they're still married. And for 48 years. Ross also constructed a 1,200 plus square foot workshop, and in his shop he builds a variety of custom cabinets as well as smaller projects. He enjoys woodworking and has it not only as a hobby but as a source of income for a bit of mad money. Jerry Trujillo was very difficult. He refused to give me his bio. So I made one up. I'm going to read it. All right. Anyway, finally he kicked in. He kicked in yesterday, and I guess I sweated out of him. He's worked for the federal government for 35 years, 28 years with the FFA, and woodworking is a hobby for 25 years. He looks good for a 150-year-old man.
FAA, not FFA.
Oh, that's right. I used to be an FFA. Okay, no, FFA. Okay. FAA. That's what I wrote down was FFA. Future Farmers of America? Federal? Yeah, there we go. Okay, here's his bio. Jerry is a longtime member. He lives in sight of Ross Barnes' house and shop at the end of the world. Literally. Jerry has a huge workshop built separate from his house. He has to add to it often because Jerry is plagued with a very serious personality complex. He has rooms and rooms of woodworking machines. Now you have to understand there's a high degree of truth in this. Okay. He has planning areas, storage rooms for all the equipment that he buys at below bargain prices. He spends long hours, way into the night, looking on the internet and newspapers from around the world. Okay? He cannot resist a bargain, and despite the fact that he has 10 of the same item, he has to have another one. Yes, our beloved Jerry is very sick, but he pays his due, and we do enjoy having him with us. Okay. Today, yeah, oh, thank you. There's more truth than fiction in that, and he knows it. Today, they will be presenting the ultimate router table. Their presentation will cover a wide range of topics, including, but not limited to, purchasing or custom making components, cost considerations, drawer designs and flaws, overall design specifics, router choices and options, as well as guidance on the safe operating procedures for such a machine and lessons learned. Let's give them a good welcome.
See where you're going with it. Thank you. Well, Jerry's shy, so he's asked me to do the vast majority of this, and I said, okay. This has nothing whatsoever to do with the presentation, but I saw this online. Young folks may have these. They're the fidgeting widget thingies that are popular now. We had those when I was a kid. Just thought I'd add that. Doesn't cost anything either. That's kind of where I am with this and anything else. Welcome to my brain, and away we go. So, got the next one, Derek? Oh.
We got a working control.
Oh,
now.
it does work if I can figure out which button.
Advance and
Oh,
retreat.
cool. Okay. About 4 years ago, Jerry and I met up in Denver at a woodworking show. A company named Peachtree had these tops for sale. Look at a picture and prices now. And we kind of talked about it, and I thought about it, and I'd been thinking about making a router table some time ago. And since Peachtree had these for sale, we each bought one of these and said, hey, let's get together, since we live within spitting distance, big spit, of each other in the southern part almost of the state, south of Belen. And so we did. Took us about 9 months before we got both of them completed, but that's working on bits and pieces. So mine, of course, is on the left-hand side, and Jerry's is on the right. So here's what we'll look at right quick. I'll go through these quickly. You're going to maybe want to buy some of these parts and pieces. We'll look at the variations and what the options might be. Or you might want to make them. Call them custom components and parts and pieces. So if you're interested in getting into woodworking, this would be an opportunity to really get into it. How about the cost? There's prices involved in a lot of this stuff. Drawers, we'll talk about designs and flaws, and there are some. How about the overall design? How big do you want to make it? And router choices, there's a variety out there. If you go to the internet and look on the title Google and go for the ultimate router table, you will be overwhelmed, I will guarantee it, with all the variety that's out there. And of course, operational safety, last but not least. Big question, how much money do I have to put out? You ready for this? About $1,000, roughly. Now, if you think about this, what does a new saw stop table saw run you? $3,000, $6,000. How about a horizontal drum sander? They're up to around $1,200. A good Laguna bandsaw, 14-inch, 16-inch. So this $1,000 is, I think, within the ballpark. Plus, you've got an opportunity now to make it yourself and have the self-satisfaction both Jerry and I have it with these things. Derek?
Is that $1,000 including the router?
The $1,000 include the router? Yes. The router, the top. There's other things, drawer slides. We'll look at some of the varieties and costs of those. So all of the parts and pieces that go into one of these tables is about $1,000. And there's ways to cut corners and not cut quality. Recommend it. You buy this stuff before you start. As does happen quite frequently, some company says, well, this particular product has these dimensions. Well, they may not be quite what they say it is. They sometimes don't tell the truth. Get the pieces in. Get the router in if you're going to buy one. Get the drawer slides in. Get the casters. There's a lot of stuff. This one right now from Peachtree, I looked it up last week, about $340 plus tax, title, and license to get it here. That's this particular top that we've got right here. It comes with lots of bells and whistles. Question?
Is that everything you see there?
Everything you see there.
The fence and everything?
The fence and everything. Plus some other stuff. John, was that your question too?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, the insert and the fence are part of the job.
Yeah, the insert. What did I do with it? I just had my pointer here someplace. I lost, there it is. Lost it. If I remember which end of the pointer to use. Oh, there it is. Yeah, the insert, all of this comes with it. The fence with the stops and the guard and the feather board all come with it. Additionally, this particular design has a dual track, which if you, maybe you have seen it when you looked up here, one of the tracks is for a miter gauge. The other track is a T-track for clamps you might want to put in place. That particular fence has lots of, I'm getting old, got the shakes, lots of slots, both in the front and at the back. Got a variety of those. So I like this particular one. The only thing that did not come, well, not only, one of the things that did not come with it is this hose that goes from the back of the fence, that's this part here, back of the fence on down. I got that from Rockler. Jack?
You know, Peachtree makes a T-track, where another one slides in the extrusion also. Do you know if that is that?
Oh, Jack was talking about a dual T-track system. I have not seen that. Check online at Peachtree, and like I said, you can be overwhelmed with a lot of this stuff. Steve?
Do you need to pick out your router first to ensure that you get the right base plate or pre-drill?
Well, yes and no. Well, repeat the question. Thank you. Steve wanted to know, do you have to get the router first, or can you get it afterward? I bought the top, then they bought the router. What I discovered was, and I'll talk about routers here when we get to it, this particular package that I bought, it's a Milwaukee, has both a solid base or a stationary base and a plunge base with it. Unfortunately, none of the holes that were in this top, yeah, in here, none of those holes lined up with my router base. So I had to very carefully, and I'm off about a 64th of an inch, I think, centering my router base in the center of this hole, but it doesn't affect what I do. But my recommendation, yeah, buy the router first if you're going to buy one, and the table, get all the pieces there to start with. Ben?
Does the red insert come in different diameters?
Does the red insert come in different diameters? What you see is pretty much what you get. This is the only one that's there that you can get. I've actually had to machine out the hole a little bit because I had one router bit that was slightly larger in diameter than that insert. So I've actually had to sand it out just a little bit to make it fit. Tracy?
Does this have a Jessup type raising and lowering of the router bit?
You're talking about it, does it have a router lift? Yes, it does. And we'll look at that as we get into it. Good question. Anybody else? Jack?
It would appear with that small hole you couldn't use raised panel bits on.
With the small holes, you couldn't use raised panel bits. There's a dual insert in there. You can actually remove the second insert as well. It's got some screws to hold it in place, but you can actually make the hole larger. Of course, the safety thing is the smaller the diameter of the hole, the less possibility of your project diving down into the hole. So you want to use the smallest insert possible. But yeah, you can use the large panel bits on this one. Any other questions? Jerry's going to jump in sometime and smack me on the back of the head when. Guess what's out there for sale? That one runs about $330 right now from Woodcraft. That was my first one. It worked fine. It folds up as long as you don't have the router connected into it. Once you put the router into it, it won't fold up. But it's a good start. Recommendation, if you don't like the base on it, take it off. You got a good router top. You can go online, again, get overwhelmed. Craig's got this one out here. I did not buy it. I was just kind of looking online. Some of these pictures, unfortunately, are a little bit fuzzy, and it's not your vision that's going. I took these, borrowed them from the internet, and when I enlarged them to get them on this particular program, they're a little fuzzy. But Craig's got this one out here. You got the top and the legs. They're going for $450 plus shipping. This one, Daryl Filkins had. I don't know if this is the one he sold or not. I know he sold one of them. His also has a commercial top, and the reason I know it's commercial is right there, and I wasn't able to pull it up tight enough, is a brand, but I don't know what it was. So he took a commercial top, and I'm assuming made his own base, sort of like Jerry and I did with these two.
I bet it's woodpecker.
Was it a woodpecker design?
Well, he tends to buy woodpecker stuff.
Okay, woodpecker would be another source for different tops. And again, you can get overwhelmed with all kinds of sources out there. Here's one. Rex, are you here today? Yeah, right here. Oh, there he is. There's Rex. Is that a, well, I'm going to make the statement. This part of it is probably a commercially purchased top. Oh, Triton. And then I'm assuming you also made the top wider, made the that insert fit into it. So all kinds of designs. Does this have its own home, or is it on casters?
No casters.
No casters. So this has its own home in the corner. Depending upon how much room you have in your shop determines what you might want to do with these. Here's another one, just a picture off a Wood magazine. This particular top, I looked at the corner right here, if you get up close you can see it. There's some end grain of that front strip. This is homemade. My preference on a particular router top is get a commercial one as opposed to homemade. You can make them at home, that's fine, but my experience has been anytime, and I do use contact cement, one of our presenters doesn't like it, but I use contact cement to put down laminate. If you get the smallest particle of dirt between the underside of your laminate and the top of your substrate, you're going to have a bump. You can use a block of wood and a hammer to try to get it out. Sometimes that will not work. So my experience has not been all that great doing laminate tops. A commercial one like this one, it's already flat. That one I wouldn't really call a router, but there's all kinds of folks out there doing all kinds of stuff with all kinds of tools. And I don't know that that's a Dremel tool, but that was just one I happened to spot and went, yeah, well, that's interesting. Oop, back, I went too far. Other styles and designs. Here we go. We're trying to overwhelm everybody today with router tables. This is one particular design. I don't see a fence on that one. You may have it clamped on somewhere. Double doors, and that's probably where the router goes. This one was interesting. Again, kind of fuzzy. But if you put a hinge on the back side, back here, you can then raise the top up and get to your router. There's a concept. If you see a design you happen to like, take another style and modify it. Here's one. Ron Danner, I think you have a table saw and router combination, something like this. Okay, there's a table saw right underneath here, and then an extension on the table saw wing, and that's where your router table can go. So you can combine the two. If you're hurting for space, there's another way to do it. And there's a simple one. That one's out of, was it? No, that was online someplace. Very basic. The router size can be important as well. This one probably is down around 1 horsepower. Not very big. And if you want a simplified version, it works. Just put a router in a piece of particle board. With that in mind, I have shown this one before, but there's a router table I've had for years. It works fine. Jerry also has a small one at his place, and he and I have both dedicated these to like roundovers. So if you put a roundover bit, once you get it set up, you're ready to go. The disadvantage with this particular one, and I've mentioned it before in another presentation, with the router mounted in here, and this is a 1 horsepower Craftsman, with its weight is actually pulled down on the center of this plastic and is now taken as set. If you put a level across here, you'll find that this middle is about a 32nd of an inch below the outside edges. Jerry's solution was to put a piece of plastic on top. So he gave me a piece of 1/4 inch acrylic plastic, and what I will do when I get home, I'll put my level back on here again, take some playing cards, masking tape, double stick tape, and start playing with it and find out where I can have to raise this up to get this center part level, and then bolt it in place. And the solid, smooth top eliminates all the grooves and holes and so forth, and that will work quite well. So this one works fine as a router table, and as I said, I dedicate it. Jack?
What's the wood you've got attached to the legs?
Oh, the question is, what's the wood attached to the legs for? I have an old Workmate, and I set that up, open the jaws on it, and clamps here and here, and it's just the right height without putting the legs down on it. clamp it in place, makes a nice workbench. Yes, sir.
If you want to fill in the void, take auto body filler and use very little chemical to set it up. Lay it down, make it flat, and it'll be done.
Screed it down.
Oh, auto body filler, do the same thing.
Make sure it's real slow set so you have time to get it level.
Good. You don't want to go this way is what you're saying. Okay.
Sounds like he learned
Say,
that the hard
yeah,
way.
belt sand it down. No, don't do that.
If you have one of these, keep it. They're very, very handy to have.
And like Jerry has 20 routers, I think I've got about 8. So I can dedicate one of them to this and just leave it there.
Down to 13.
Down to 13, okay. Okay, let's build it. Are we doing? Oh, we're doing okay on time. I like this. I paraphrased it. Well, I don't make mistakes. I never make mistakes. I make lots of field changes. And I'll show you a couple as we go along. But the important thing, you're going to make mistakes, I'll guarantee it. Figure out how to fix them. That's the important part. Okay, what will this project do for you? Test your patience. Guaranteed, you may find yourself with an addition to your vocabulary when you get through. Test your woodworking skills. In addition to all that, it will test your patience. Guaranteed. There's a lot to it. This particular model was modeled after one by Norm Abram. He used to have a TV show. He was around until 2009, I think. You can still find some of his YouTube videos if you Google it. This was his original design. Now the fence on this, notice, is a pretty high fence. The one that Jerry and I have is a shorter version. It doesn't go up near as high. I have not yet made any project where I need a fence that high. But the way this is designed, I could actually make an additional fence and raise it up if I need it and attach it. That would work fine. But this comes from Norm Abram. The one that Jerry and I made comes from this guy. Don Phelan, I think is his name. There's a set of plans, 40-some pages long. But he has taken the same design, and he tells you it's from Norm Abram. And one of the things Ben Blackwell talked to me about here a couple months ago, he says, you are going to provide SketchUp drawings for this, aren't you? And I said, okay. Well, kind of, sort of. This guy has the SketchUp plans for this. He also designs and builds his own tabletop and his own fence, which by purchasing these, I didn't have to do that, but that's what it looks like. Yeah, there's the first page. And if you go to Creston Wood, you'll find it.
Go back one.
Go back one? There it is. CrestonWood.com. Derek?
Is he selling those plans, or are they free?
Good question. Does he sell them? They are free. I like that. Yeah, you can download either the drawings, as I did with this set, or you can download the SketchUp plans as well. I don't know if you can work the SketchUp plans or not from the download. I did not try that. But they're free. It's the best part of it. Okay, watch for errors. Oops. Yeah. I'll show you the problem with this one. I think of myself as tenacious. My wife actually refers to me as anal retentive. Yeah. John agrees. He knows that. Yeah. What I had done with these drawings, once I got them, and I recommend you do the same thing regardless of whether it's Dan's drawings or your own, go through them with a fine-tooth comb, because you do not want to start making a project, and I see Rick over here doing this, it sounds like he's been there. Trust the drawing as far as dimensions are concerned, and you find, was it Ken's over here doing this? Don't do that. You may find yourself with some errors. Here's an error in this one. There's a couple others. What happened? Oops, wrong one here. Let's do this. What happened, there's a dimension right there. Can you see that on the monitor? I don't know if it shows up or not. Okay, the dimension from here to the underside, it says on that first drawing is 16¼ inches. If you look at the other side, that dimension calls out as 17. He's off by 3/4 of an inch. I think I know what he did, but there is a reason to look at these drawings and look at them carefully, because you may find some mistakes in there. Not that he's a bad guy. I like his drawings, but
This cabinet design, the base frame designed so that it allows the overlap for the slides on each side of the door.
is this the face frame designed to allow for the overlap of the drawer slides?
Is this based on having drawer slides on each drawer?
The question is this based on having drawer slides on each side? The way it's been built here is pretty much what Dan did. However, I'll show you some drawings of the drawers when we get to them. Jerry and I put on drawer slides. You have to take that in consideration. And I did have to modify a few things as far as the drawer design and how it was, the carcass was put together. I say we, I mean Jerry too. And I want to make sure I include Jerry here. So check for errors. To show you where one error might be, right in this lower corner, he's got a clamp on this one. And one of the drawings, he points out a particular dimension for it, and another drawing, it's a little bit different. It's subtle, but it is a change. So build the carcass first. That design and dimension is based on how big of a top you're going to have. Jerry and I bought these tops, and I think, if I remember right, the dimensions for this particular drawing worked for this top. If you're going to make your own top and make it larger or smaller, then you're going to have to modify the drawing accordingly. But keep in mind too, you make one change in the drawing, that can change something else down the line. Gail?
Is your top 24 by 32?
What's the size of the top? Just happen to have a yo-yo here. That one's 32 and, yes, 24 by 32. Good guess. So build the carcass first. That's where you start. Okay, now we get into drawers. Oh, Ivan, I'm sorry.
I'm just curious because I did a similar design on mine, but I use the existing hardware that Rockler has. So it comes in to the compartment with a 4-inch lead and a 2.5 up above. And my question is, with the two smaller ones like I see you have on here, does it do an efficient job of pulling the sawdust out?
Oh, what Ivan's asking about is dust collection. We've got a whole section on it. Hang on to that, and then we'll take a look at it. Steve?
In terms of building your carcass and sizing it to match the top, is it important to have the top overhang on the front sides, or so why?
Question is, do we need overhang on the top? I'm going to say yes. I built this one specifically, well, Jerry and I built this specifically, about an inch overhang, inch to inch and a half. So if you need to put clamps on it for maybe an alternate fence or something else you've got designed for it, you've got the space underneath to attach the clamps. John? Somebody else had a question. Oh, Gail, I'm sorry.
I use the overhang sometimes. Depending on the project, I'll put a longer fence. Then I'll put a nail under that fence to hold the longer stock.
Additional fences require a way to clamp it in place. Okay. Oh, talking about drawers. This is what John Ellis here was asking about. These drawers go into grooves. Again, I apologize for the shakes. There are actually not so much drawers. If you look over here on the right-hand side, Dan has used just a platform of plywood, drilled holes in it, and put a piece of plywood underneath. And that is his drawer for holding router bits. The bottom drawers, which is in the lower right-hand corner, there's where he used the drawer slides.
Do you want me to zoom in on your drawer slides?
I'm going to take one out here in about 3 seconds.
Okay.
John.
Question for you. Now that you've been living with this, are these small drawers, is it really necessary to put slides on them for that size drawer?
Question is, since we've been working with these, lose a little space because of the drawer slides, because they take up a ½ inch on each side. We'll talk about that here in a minute. The question is, am I happy with that? Yeah, I am. Jerry?
I am too.
And if you have extra router bits, have a cabinet like I do, extra.
Or another room.
Or another room. Yeah. But for what I just was, you don't lose that much.
How about that? Oh. Yeah, let me turn it upside down and we'll see which ones are trapped in there. This particular product that's a foam, I thought I had some pieces left over. I guess we used them all. It has both the 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch holes in the foam. It's a pretty rigid foam. I would recommend if you use this foam, have a rag or a glove. Be able to get these bits out because they are sharp. And that foam is so tight after sitting in here for about 6 months, you're going to have to, and Jerry's the one that taught me this, waller it first before you try to pull it out. And you can imagine what will happen if you have bare fingers and it doesn't pull out when you expect it to. You may find out what color the blood actually is. But that's one option here.
What's the source of the foam?
The foam we also got at Peachtree. That was up at the woodworking show in Denver. I've seen it on the internet, but I don't know. Who does, John? Grizzly might have it. At large pieces. These were about 12 by 20 some sheets. Cut it on a bandsaw. Jack? Pre-drilled, yes. Excellent question. Oh. For those that didn't see. Okay, talking about drawer slides. Let me get to the next one here.
Russ, I have had those pre-drilled foam for 10, 12 years now. And I have to say, if I had it to do all over again, I just spent an afternoon drilling some 1/2 inch plywood or MDF with slightly oversized holes and use it. There's no reason to need the foam.
That's what I did. I ran out of foam and I pre-drilled some MDF and made it a little bit larger.
John doesn't like the foam, and I think I'm heading down that road too. Gail?
Yeah, I have hundreds of router bits. I have a case that you've probably seen it. It holds 100 router bits. And what I've done is drilled a 1/2 inch hole, and then you can go to a hardware store and get what they call spacers, plastic spacers that are 3/4 inch long with a 1/2 inch outside diameter and a 1/4 or 3/8 inch diameter. And I have a 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2 inch router bits.
All your holes are 1/2 inch.
All the holes are 1/2 inch.
Okay. Gail's got another way to hold router bits. Here's one. The bit I bought, or set of bits, came with this one. And it's sized, I think, for shipping, for 1/2 inch and for 1/4 inch shanks. About, several months ago, we had a presentation for everything you want to know about routers. Gail brought up the point, there are router bits with 3/8 inch shanks. And I thought, oh, Gail's at least 2 months older than me. And I thought, well, maybe he's got some old bits. Come to find out, I went online last night, and sure enough, you can find 3/8 shank router bits, or 8mm even. Gail?
Well, those 3/8 actually came from Travers. They were a machinist company.
Oh, machinist company made those, but they are available.
And you got to get a collet for your router.
Yeah, another collet for the router. If I don't mention it, and Jerry doesn't remind me, when you get the collets, I'll tell you about this one. Ben wanted to know about these. I was kind of sneaky when I used them. What happens is this. Here's the other drawer. That drawer comes out. It has 3/4 extension drawer slides on it. The top is 1.5 inch overhang. I cannot get to the bits at the back. So what do? Well, I have to release the little levers inside, and they're in, well, let's see. Let me do it this way. This is the style. Oop. Okay. Throw them around here. This is an inexpensive set. Of course, it's going to fight me. We'll get there yet. Here we go. This is the release for releasing the drawer. And it sets in this way. I have to reach in and do this with it. I can't get my little fingers back behind or back in between the side frame and the drawer slide. Won't fit. So I made these to fit into the drawer to release the slides so I can get the drawer out. That's it. That's how that works. I think, is this the set?
What brand are those slides?
These are KV, Nap and Vote, on this particular one. I got the wrong set, I think, Jerry.
So they can hold up how many pounds?
These are rated at 75 pounds. That's an issue that you probably wouldn't even want to worry about for a router table like this, because you're very seldom going to even come close to that. Now, John Ellis might, with some of the stuff he makes. John?
I found slides where the drawer comes out and clears the face frame. Right.
Okay. What John was talking about, he said he's got slides that come out and clear the face frame. This is going to be one of those times. See if I can get this out of there. There it comes. Okay. What I'll do is send this set around. You can see how it works. The drawer slide. Let's see. This goes in the cabinet. This one gets mounted on the side of the drawer, and then they slide together. Now these also have another disadvantage, and the way these are designed, let me turn around this way, so that the drawer stays shut, there's a little hump right here, which means as the drawer comes out, it's hard to see, but the drawer has to come up a little bit to get over the hump. This goes as far as design is concerned. I was going to be real neat and design these drawer faces so I only had a 1/16 of an inch between all the parts and pieces. Don't do that. They fit, but what I had to do, I went in with a wrench and I modified that hump. Otherwise, what happens? The drawer faces hit each other. So that's this particular design, and these are 3/4 inch extension. They only come out about 3/4 of the way. So if you have not had an opportunity to look at that particular design, here's that one. Here's another design. Let me open this up right quick.
Well, while you're opening, can you comment on a source of information on drawer slides?
Where do you get drawer slides?
No, not
Oh.
so much where you get them. You can make a career out of studying them.
You
So can you help us not spend the rest of our life selecting them?
I like Amazon for getting drawer slides. And I'll talk about those in a minute. I can figure out which way these go. There's a right and a left. Here we go.
The best way to get information on slides is have a neighbor that'll teach you about them. And you don't have to spend a lot of time.
If I can figure out which one's which. Anyway, you get a pair of them. These are known as epoxy. They do say CR, DR. Okay, cabinet right, drawer right. And cost on these, I've had them for a long time. Has anybody checked on prices on these things? They're cheap?
$3 to $4.
Oh, here we go. $3 to $4. Big box stores have them. Okay, these, here we go. Now I got it. These are also 3/4 extension. What brand? I believe these are also KV. It doesn't say, I think these are KV. But you can see they're kind of bent down here and bent over here. That is to help the drawer stay in place. 5 minutes, okay?
And some of these slides have a plastic connection if they go in the back and the slide fits in there.
Well, if you overload your drawer, eventually that piece of plastic snaps off and your drawer falls down. Yeah, I did that on 2 of my drawers. So some of these drawer slides are cheap. John?
I think the biggest improvement in drawer slides, just this year, we've bought quite a few cabinets, and the drawer slides are automatic closures. So you just push it forward, closes, and bolts and self-close.
John's talking about automatic closing drawers. You get it almost all the way closed, and there's a device takes over and soft closes the drawer for you. Now you get those things, and they become more and more expensive. More stuff
But the number of times it keeps you from hitting the side of the drawer when you're focused on something else, like carrying.
What John says, if you torque off, you can't slam the door shut anymore.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there are any other, in terms of the router table itself, if there's any other kind of specific kinds of things that you're planning for in terms of that storage. Stuff that you keep in the drawers, and you need to size the drawer in a particular way to make sure that.
The question is, are there other ways of storage? Yes, there's some slides coming up on bit storage. We'll take a look at those. Right quick, about what, 2 more minutes, Mike?
You have about 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes, good, we can do this. The type of drawer slide I like the best. These are mounted on the sides. Again, make sure you buy your drawer slides first. Typically, rule of thumb says the thickness is 1/2 inch. There are drawer slides, when you get instructions with them, I've got some I bought the other day, no instructions, no screws. So I've got to buy them screws. But they were a good price. Anyway, it will tell you you have 1/2 inch plus a 1/16 minus 0. So if your carcass, and we'll look at some math here after the break, if your carcass has a specific dimension, let's call it 12 inches, your drawer has to be 11 inches maximum width. And it's been my luck, sometimes I get 11 1/16. Ain't gonna work. So make your drawers, my suggestion, make them a 1/16 of an inch narrower and shim. That works good. This particular, here we go, drawer slide has a rubber baby buggy bumper back here at the back end. When the drawer goes all the way closed, can you see that? And you push it in, it locks it in place. Now, yes, over time it will probably wear, but that's what holds it in place. This one is a full extension. This bar stops right here. This is the piece, get it out of there. There we go. That's the part that's going to go on the drawer. This is the part that goes on the carcass. And because of its design, it will allow you then, get all the way back in here and back out, to have the drawer come full out, which works better than the 3/4 extension. One other, and I bought this for another project and didn't realize I had done it. This one is like a 20 inch. This is an over travel. Actually comes out 1 inch beyond. And these would be handy, especially for the top drawer on this particular cabinet. So these are nice guides to get. There are others in the upper right-hand corner that are mounted underneath. I don't particularly care for those. Derek?
I just wanted to make one comment. As these more and more advanced slides have come out with this soft close and those sorts of features, the more basic ones like this have come down in price. Both the standard, like he just showed, and the basic level of the undermount are about half what they were in 1998. And that's not accounting for inflation.
Yeah.
So if you think they're too expensive, take another look. You might be.
They're about $10 a pair.
Yeah.
Not even that. That leads right into the next slide. Look at that. 1 minute. I bought these off Amazon. That's these 20-inch extensions. These are without instructions, without screws. But a 10 pair pack from Amazon, $50. That's the full extension. That's this set right here. And a box of 10. Again, the disadvantage was there were no screws. But I thought $50 is fine. That's $5 a pair. And if you check that with some of your local big box stores, they're going to be a lot more expensive than that. Yes, sir.
Did you mark your slides before or after your case was built?
Did I mark them? Oh, mount them. I mounted the slides after the case was built. And I crossed my fingers that they would fit. Okay, are we ready? couple of comments were made during the break, and I had forgotten about this. These slides have a very light coating of grease on them. They're fine in a non-dusty environment, but as the comment was made, who told me about this? In a dusty environment, after a couple of years, they're going to get full of dust. That's one of the drawbacks. But I do like the fact they are solid. These are rated, I think, at 100 pounds. So no problem with those. Oh, air compressor cleans out most of it. Okay, any other questions from before? Okay. Now we talked about drawers and different styles. The particular drawer that Dan Phelan made, and I prefer this design, is you make the drawer front separate from the drawer itself. That way, if the drawer is a little bit skewed one way or another, or if the drawer slides aren't quite parallel, one's off a little bit, you can accommodate or modify that with the drawer front. That's the way this cabinet is made. And Jerry, you made yours the same way? Your drawer front, the drawer fronts are separate from the drawers, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, same way, same design.
That's cheating.
You betcha. It's cheating. I like cheating. The other two, we talked about different ways of holding router bits. That's why on the design you will find on this set, what Dan has done is put strips of plywood in between, left spaces, and then the plywood slides into that. One of the drawbacks, and I did not see a solution to this problem, if you pull that drawer out too far, it's going to be kind of heavy on the back end. You may be picking up the bits off the floor. So that's something to think about in design. Question?
Ross, did you consider using dovetail slides, wooden dovetail slides instead of the metal slides?
Did we consider using wooden dovetail slides instead of metal slides? I have in the past. Again, I don't like wood slides because in my brain, as you saw from the first slide up there, welcome to my mind, there's more wear on something like that than there would be on one of these. Now, I'll probably be hopefully in the wood shop in the sky by the time these things wear out, and I'll let somebody else worry about that. But did I consider it? No. Jerry, did you consider?
I did consider it. This is much easier, less time consuming.
What we did, it built this one kind of first, and Jerry says, well, I don't like what you did on that. I'm going to do it my way. So we'll call this a prototype. Ivan.
I made a drawer and a desk with a typewriter slide out with those wooden slides. And I find them very troublesome, very hard binding and so forth, you know. So I wasn't very impressed with the whole lot.
Yeah. The wood, he said, the wood slides tend to bind. John?
I've used these ball bearing slides fairly extensively. And the problem, if you don't have the right tool, and you may be talking about this soon, is getting them perpendicular to the front of the drawer, where they're going parallel to the ground, if you will. Right. And Rockler has a little thing for like $15 that you set the slide on, and you flush it up with the face frame, and then it allows you to put the screws in, because you'll just pay hell getting them at the right height, one side to the other, and getting them straight. And I suggest you look at that apparatus. It's a little jig.
Yeah, what John's talking about is the Rockler jig for putting in drawer slides, and it can accommodate a variety of them. I bought one because I had to have it, have not yet used it. I found the old-fashioned cheap way to do things. If I knew that this bottom of my drawer slide was going to be, pick a number, 12 inches from the bottom, I cut a piece of plywood, 12 inches, set it on the side, set it down, put the screws in, put it to the other side, put that guide on. It's a cheap way to do it, and you can verify that you have it parallel, and that's the important part. However you want to do it.
I ran out of plywood.
Ran out of plywood, yeah. Okay, here's some math. We're talking about things to do. My brother-in-law and I made ourselves each about a 2-foot cube that fits underneath the drill press, 4 drawers each. So I said, okay, the width between the walls inside the carcass, 22 3/8 of an inch. So I deducted a 1/2 inch, mine's a 1/2 inch for the drawer slides. And I said, okay, because of my design, my drawer front and back are going to fit within rabbets. So typically on 1/2-inch plywood, you rabbet a 1/4 inch in on each end. So my ends now, I have to subtract 2 1/4 of an inch increments. And these are for the front and the backs of these drawers. Plus I said, I'm going to make this a 1/16 of an inch narrower. I can always shim. Trying to cut out too wide of a drawer down is a headache. And again, ask me how I know. How many times have I done that? So I did the math. Anybody good at math?
No.
Guess what? If you do the math, I see some grins. What's wrong with that? I'm an inch off. If you do the math on that, that's supposed to be 20 13/16. Well, guess what? I'm smart. I don't have to verify my dimensions. I made 8 drawers at that dimension. I did not verify that it was the right size.
Boss, you could also measure that again, then cut another inch off.
Yeah, yeah. Measure the end, cut another inch off. That's what Alan likes to do. Yeah, yeah. Measure twice and still too short. Oh, go metric. I like metric, but all my tape measures are in English. So anyway, throw them away. So 4 solutions. First of all, make 8 new drawers. Ain't gonna happen. I'm too proud for that, plus I didn't have the plywood. Second solution, did have some 1/2-inch strips. I could cut 1/2-inch strips wide enough to fit this dimension and attach 1 strip on each side of each of the 8 drawers, which means I'd have to cut 16 pieces and assemble all that. That's a lot of work. Option number 3, cut the strips to go inside the carcass. This width, there's 8 drawers. 16 pieces. I didn't like that one either. Final solution, Ed and I cut 3-inch wide strips and put vertical pieces, 2 at the front and 2 at the back. Now that meant I only had 2 screws holding my guide in, but that was okay because these drawers weren't that heavy. So there's my math. And some people like word problems. If you can't read it back there, if you have 4 pencils and 7 apples, how many pancakes will fit on the roof? Purple, because aliens don't wear hats. What? Yeah. All right, now we get into bit storage. Questions or comments were coming up about different ways of storing bits. Rex, I think you have behind your router that we showed, a router table, looked like he's got a cabinet for bits sitting on the back wall. That's an option, instead of storing them in the cabinet.
I bought that way. I didn't make it
He didn't make it, he bought it that way. No, you made it that way.
That's a design.
There's all kinds of designs out there. John Ellis has been talking about the fact that he doesn't like, in the lower right-hand corner, that's that foam, and I'm leaning toward his decision too. I'm not real fond of it. Upper left, you can buy that. I think that's from Rockler. Woodworking Supply may have these. It's a metal frame mounted to the side of your table, to the back wall. Lower left-hand corner, some people use pegboard. That works too for 1/4 inch. The one I'm most intrigued with is in the upper right-hand corner. I'm leaning toward making storage with that. That looks like cubes. I'm going to guess they're 1.5 inch, 2x4 cubes. You can drill a 1/2 inch or slightly larger hole one direction, a 1/4 inch hole the other direction, and if you have Gale's 3/8 inch shank bits, go 3/8 the other direction. Now, depending on which way you turn the cube determines on which bit you store, and you can design the size of those cubes based on the size of your bits. Gale?
Yeah, the problem with that is those bits are heavy, they're top heavy, and you're going to flip them over and chip your carbide.
Ah. Gale points out because the bits are top heavy, you tip them over and chip the carbide. Well, you take some of that foam that you're going to take out from what you had before and stick in the sides.
There's another way.
Another way.
Egg crated.
Egg crated. Okay, I'm not familiar.
Right.
You're talking about the sealing suspension systems they used to have for egg crate. Okay.
No, you egg crated. You take 1/4 inch or even less in hardboard, fit them together this way.
Yeah.
And you can make it anyway. Then you just reach down there and pick it up, and they don't bump into each other, and they're easy to support.
What Mike's talking about is taking masonite, cutting notches in it, take a series and set them in and make an egg crate and put the bits in. That's another option. There's all kinds out there. Okay, how big are you going to make this thing? Well, it depends. Standard heights for kitchen countertops, 36 inches. Vanity countertops, 30 inches. There are standards out there, but if you're like our president, who's, what do you say, 6'1"? I'm down here at 5'10". My height, I like this particular height, works fine. If you're up here in the clouds, 36 inches is probably not going to be very comfortable for you. What I recommend you do, get your workbench and some plywood and some scrap wood and begin building up and say, okay, what feels comfortable for me? You want to be able to stand comfortably, not be bending over because you're going to get a backache out of that, but you don't want to be too high up either. Gail?
I'm 6 foot and I make mine at 41.
He likes 41 inches. Again, you're making this. You figure out what's comfortable for you. But standard, if you want to go with standards, is 36. Don't forget, if you put casters on it, and by the way, I did, yeah, this picture shows it. I have since changed that. What did I do with my point? There it is. There are casters. You barely see them on the bottom. There is a problem with casters on this type of a machine and the way this is built. The casters are already back 3.5 inches because of the toe kick. Then when you push the cart or the cabinet forward, the caster rotates. Now the caster is even further back from the front. And I've had problems, and why I changed this is because the cabinet now wants to tilt because it's top heavy. So if you're going to put casters on it, keep that in mind. There's blocks underneath for casters, but I opted not to do that.
Eliminate your toe kick.
Eliminate the toe kick, yeah, well, that would be one option if you don't want a toe kick underneath. That would work too. Ivan.
Another option, Rockler has it, I think I've seen it in other catalogs as well, but they're a caster that's designed to be bolted onto the legs of the workbench. But these bolt on the outside, and they're very similar to your steering wheel on the front. And you just pick up each corner and have, you can go in any direction.
Yeah, there's other designs out there as opposed to casters underneath. By the way, Harbor Freight makes casters, but they're not very good. Not for this kind of weight. Tracy?
I do it different. I put everything on pallets. And I got a pallet jack.
Put on pallets with a pallet jack. That works.
And it's always flat on the floor.
Yeah, but we've seen your shop. You've got room for that kind of thing. It's got a forklift.
Joe?
Just to say, there's a caster store in town that we go to all the time. Yeah. So it's really great.
On Ellis, a caster store in town.
Casters of
Albuquerque.
Yeah.
We need casters and stuff?
Ellison and I-25.
Check that one.
I just motorized all my machinery and I have a computer program to move our breakfast.
John, I think your eyes are brown. You're full.
Are you a fisherman too?
Okay. So I think I mentioned this before. Jerry and I looked at this too. The size of the cabinet itself is based on the top. If you buy a commercial top and you want overhang on it, make sure you take that into consideration.
Did you print those?
I'm sorry?
Is that your printing?
Is this my printing? No, this is from a program, Keynote.
And take into consideration anything sticking out the back like your dust hose. I made that mistake. And the cabinet's out in front of the wall on the rear.
I'll turn this around a minute when we get to dust collection. As John pointed out, take into consideration what you got on the back side. Because if you want to push it against the wall, it ain't going to go. Okay, turn the thing on and off. One of the things I didn't mention on the first slide with the guy we made these from. The other guy. Norm, thank you. It just went on out. Norm Abram. His switch is located in the upper right-hand corner, right underneath the table. So consider where you want to mount it. Jerry's going to tell us about his. This is his router, or his table.
Well, I thought it'd be easier if you put the switch. I thought it'd be easier if I could just turn it off with my knee, so I put it up front. And the door is notched by where I'm working on it, and I want to turn it off, I just tap it, and it turns off. And that's, I think, we did Ross's first, and then I looked at it and said, well, I like it here better. So we did that. See where it's up front?
How about turning it on?
Oh, you push it.
Yes, please.
So about 20 years ago, the club built some dead man safety switches. It's a foot switch, but if you just step on it, nothing happens. You have to push the button, then it goes on. You can step away, you can fall over, it'll go off and it won't come back on by mistake. My question is, would people like to do that again? Parts are probably running $30, $35 now. If there's enough people interested, we could put together a little group and do it on a weekend that isn't our meeting weekend. So just give me your hand if you think you might like to build some of those. Okay, it looks like we got 20 people, so it's worth going forward with that.
Well, I'm just thinking, John asked about holes on the front door. I didn't put any except one so I could put my finger and open the door. But for the most part, I didn't find a need. My dust collector will pick up all the chips.
Is that glass or plexiglass? It's plexiglass?
Plexiglass.
The front?
Yeah.
Jack?
That's very obviously a commercial switch. What's that thing cost?
Good question. Commercial switch. Woodworker Supply has them. I looked them up the other day. They're about $35 a piece. By the way, these are not magnetic switches. A magnetic switch is a neat switch to have. What happens, you turn the machine on, your power goes off. The switch turns off, but the machine will not turn back on until you manually turn it on again. It's a safety factor. I have read some discouraging information about those. If you bang on your top hard enough, sometimes those contacts will actually make contact, even though you didn't expect it to. These are just physical switches, but they have the nice big paddle on. Like Jerry said, hit it with a knee.
Most of the magnetic switches are for high horsepower motors, but Woodcraft sells a magnetic switch that can be retrofit to a table saw, something like that. They're kind of nice, but the wiring diagram inside is it's different.
Okay, so wiring diagrams on some of these magnetics, you can get them, but
it's hard to follow there.
Hard to follow. Jack?
When you say magnetic switch, you talking about relay?
I believe they're relay. I just heard them called magnetic switch.
It is.
This is just basically a toggle on off. Is that what you're saying?
I don't have one, so I can't speak to them. I know of them, but that's my. Oh, this one. It's a physical contact in there. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Switching gears back to your plexiglass on the front of it. We used to use plexiglass in some places, but a lot of people have gone to Lexan because Lexan can take a hammer lick and it won't break. Plexiglass will break.
Yeah, good point. Difference between plexiglass and Lexan. Lexan does not break. I think this is.
Lexan is the polycarbonate.
Lexan is a polycarbonate. Okay, yeah. Lexan, I think you can machine just as you do an acrylic, but it doesn't break.
It's a little softer.
A little softer, is it? Okay. These are not. I guess Jerry and I figured if it breaks, it breaks.
Just be careful in buying a magnetic switch. Make sure it's rated for a router, because I bought some that were 15 amp rated, and the surge current on startup will just burn the thing.
Okay, so
you have to get one rated for a router.
If you're going to buy magnetic, make sure it's rated for the router. Okay. And mine is on the right-hand side. I actually like Jerry's location better. Mine is still at knee height, but I have to move to one side a little bit in order to shut it off or turn it off. How's the thing going to look? Okay. Yeah.
Just back to the switch again. Could you have dual switches, like one on each side? Is that?
Could you have dual switches? I don't know why not. Yeah. If you wire them right, put them in parallel. That should work. Yeah. Ivan?
Used one that what you do on here, you would have to modify your bench design, but you can have a bar with a double hinge on either side that you could anywhere on the top. All you would have to do is just hit that bar and it would lift the switch off.
Ivan's pointing out you have a bar all the way across. I think Derek had a table saw that was 8-foot long bar. How long was it? Very long bar for his table saw. But the idea was you could hit that bar with your knee anywhere on the table saw. So if you get into a bind where you don't want to move your hands, with a long bar, like I was talking about, or what Derek has on his table saw, hit it with a knee anywhere and shut the machine off.
Does the router just plug into the switch and the switch plugs into the wall?
Excellent question. How is it wired? What we did here, for both Jerry and me, this is the end of the switch is the plastic piece. At the very back, I bought a metal box, and I do a little bit of wiring. I'm not real fancy on electronics, but I can follow this. That box on the back is a dual plug, conventional duplex outlet. The switch controls the outlet. So the question was, do I plug the router into the outlet? Yes. The router is turned on, but it will not itself turn on until I turn the switch on. And when we get to it, in addition, my light's also plugged into it, and the light is turned on. Once I plug in the cord I've got on the side, neither the light nor the router turn on until I turn this switch on. That's the way this is.
Was that the only reason for the duplex, was because you wanted to have the light?
The only reason for the duplex, because that's what I could buy. It was easy.
Why do you even need it if you don't have the light?
If you don't have a light, you don't need it. You can use just a single outlet, but those are usually more expensive.
Or you can hardwire it into the switch, is where it's going.
Oh, hardwired into the switch. There you go.
Does not have a place to plug your router in?
The switch does not. There's no plug. I had to build it. Yeah, you either have to hardwire your router into it, and that would work fine if you don't have a light, but I just put the outlet on it.
Does your dust collection, do you start that system separately?
Question about dust collection. Once I turn on the router with the light, is it independent? It is independent. I have about 5 or 6, I've forgotten what they're called, they're little red remotes around the shop, and those all are hooked up or talk to my dust collector. So my dust collector is independent. I like that system. Some other dust collection systems are set up so when you turn your machine on, the dust collector comes on. I'm tenacious. I like to be able to turn on my dust collector when I want it to come on, not when some other system says it does. So I am independent. I'm stubborn? Yeah, that too. Gail?
Yeah, a fine vacuum cleaner, you can just plug that into the fine vacuum cleaner. And the minute you turn that switch on, your dust collector will come on.
Okay, another way to turn on dust collector. So, switch location. Where do you want to put it? I don't know if you noticed or not, but on Daryl Filkins, let me back up one, I think I can see it. Yeah. Daryl's had his right in place of this drawer. I don't think he had a drawer there. That's where his switch was located. It wasn't one of these big paddle switches, but it was a big button. And it looked like he lost a drawer to be able to have the wiring in there. But that's another option. Jerry, any comment on your aesthetics?
I like the way it looks.
Like what it looks, okay. I'll point this out to you too.
There's only one flaw in that. When I was doing the drawers, the upper right hand is different material. I ran out, so it's a little lighter. I don't like to point it out, but I guess I better.
That's terrible. Well, you just did.
I messed up on that one.
That's a field change. Yeah, I like that. That's a feature. Okay. Rule of thumb says when you build cabinets, the grain structure typically goes horizontal. Take a look.
Material.
Did I do that right? Oops. Backed up too far. Okay. Take a look at mine. If you are an aficionado of drawer fronts, look at the bottom 3. Which way does the grain direction go? Vertical. I did that on purpose. Why? Because I ran out of material to be able to go the other way. It's either that or cut a brand new sheet of ash, as it turned out plywood, just to satisfy that. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So I saw a hand fly up. No? Oh, Gail?
Trees grow vertically, so.
Oh, trees go vertically. Okay, I like that. I'll go with that one from now on. That works. Okay, here we go, dust collection. Okay, there's Jerry's. I'll let him talk about that one, his design.
I have a dust collecting system that I can hook up to the back. That I can hook up the main dust collector to the back of the router table. However, sometimes I don't want to do that. I just get my vacuum and where I can put in yeah. So, and then on the top, I also have for my shop vac. So when I'm doing a lot of router work, I put my shop vac on, and also the one in the bottom, my dust collector system. So it works pretty well. It depends what I'm doing. Depends how I hook it up.
But they both go to the top of the table. They both go to the...
No, one goes to the top and one goes to the bottom. And I can switch my shop vac to the top or the bottom. I just have to just pull off that.
But the bottom just goes inside the cabinet. It doesn't go up to where the router is?
No, just inside the cabinet.
And that collects the dust okay in there?
Yes.
Talk into his throat if you're gonna keep talking.
Yeah, it pretty much collects all of it. And if it's real heavy chips, I'll use both of them. My shop vac on the top and my commercial dust collector on the bottom.
One of the issues that you have to worry about is the amount of air that you're pulling through to keep the router cool. You're saying somewhere around 650 CFM.
Okay, John Ellis asked that question. Ross put a lot of holes on the door. I didn't. I put only one for my finger to open the door. However, there's enough gap around the door that it lets enough air, I think, to pick up the chips. But I haven't had any problem when I have them both going at the same time.
The question is, do you keep your router running long enough so that becomes an issue?
It depends what I'm doing. Not long enough. It just depends on the piece.
I've done quite a bit of production routing on large bookshelves and things, and I've never had a problem with heat. I do find that I'm not getting all the chips cleared, but I think it's because my door fits fairly tight, and I'm going to try putting some holes in it for airflow. But I've never had a heat issue. And I've had the router running for 45 minutes or more.
Also, there's inside the cabinet, there's a chute that actually goes down to the opening of the dust collector. So it falls down to that chute and it picks it up. Now he doesn't have it for the dust collector and the big 4.5 inch.
I have a 4-inch.
4-inch.
That's
Okay, notice too that Jerry has a blast gate here at the bottom, right there. So if he's using only the top, he can turn off any kind of vacuum draw from that bottom if he wants to. The question was about heating of the router. Like John, I've never had a problem with that. Hadn't even thought about it. But that would be a good issue. Are we doing this in such a way that we're going to cause overheating with the router? I frankly don't know. I've never run it long enough to worry about it. Okay, on mine, turn the table around, I don't know where I'm at. I've got a system set up so that I can draw the sawdust from the top and straight down into a piece of PVC and out the bottom, where, as Jerry mentioned, I have an adapter to take me up to a 4-inch dust collector pipe. Originally, I had the T at the very top, and I was having trouble getting the dust out from around the router, because my theory was the dust is going to be primarily at the top. Wrong. Got a lot of dust down in around the router. Thanks to Ron Danner, he happened to look at this and says, well, why don't you just turn it the other way? So I bought a couple extra pieces of PVC, and now I have a direct shot from where the router is straight out to the dust collector. Then the smaller amount, which is a finer dust, comes across the top. This particular one, this was is a template. I make a lot of these rocking ponies, if you've seen any of those. This is the template I'm using for making the rocking part. And if you look, there's a lot of sawdust built up around the top of it, but where the slot is, where the vacuum draw is, pulls the sawdust out. Works quite well. As an aside,
Ross,
question.
This PVC goes through down at the lower level also?
Yes, it goes. This is called a sanitary sweep for that PVC. It goes straight through, so it has a hole there, and it draws from the top all at the same time. I don't have an option.
That's the code for this?
Meets the code, yes. Yeah, the plumbing code right there. Yes, sir.
And be careful when you're putting in that sanitary tee, because a lot of people, I see, you got yours turned right. You want to turn the curved part the way that it's coming out, because I have seen people turn them backwards and they're the wrong way.
Oh, yeah. You have to look at which way the draw is going to be.
Yeah.
That PVC fits the standard shop vac hose?
I don't use a shop vac, Jerry. Does a PVC?
On top, it looks like a shop vac hose.
Oh, this one? This is what I bought from Rockler, and it was designed to fit a variety. Turns out it fit was 2 or 2.5 inch PVC. This one fit.
But I don't think it fits your shop vac is what it does.
Does it fit the shop vac? I don't know. I have not tried that. Probably not. Yeah, the oddball sizes. It's called duct tape. Lighting systems. I think I alluded to this before. Jerry and I have the same light. He has kept the base on this. This is a weighted base. Now he's got his light plugged in independent of the outlet for the router, so he turns it on when he wants it. Mine, as I mentioned here, is put on a bracket on top of the fence. Backing up a minute to dust collection, this is something that I saw somewhere. If you have some pieces of pipe or the hose, peanut can, coffee can. No, sorry folks, there's no peanuts. I'm not going to pass it around. No, you take the peanut can, cut the bottom out of it, squeeze the sides down, and it's just the right size with the clamp to add to your dust collection. So if you got a couple of short pieces of, which way does it go? This one? Oh, I thought you were asking which way does this go? So you can add to it. So if you got it too short of a system, take a peanut can. I think coffee cans work. There's a lot of cans similar to this, similar in size. That and a clamp. Pardon? Spanish peanuts. Yeah, these are the Redskins. Got to be the Redskins or it won't fit. Okay, question about routers. All right, what do you need? Well, Jerry has a 3.5 inch horsepower Triton. 3.5 horsepower, yeah. So, Jerry?
I've had that before. I had this router before the router table. I'm very pleased with it. It's a slow start and it's variable speed. To change the bits, it's relatively easy. It has a handle on the left side. You just crank it up and your bit goes up through the table, and when it reaches the top, it locks it so you can really easily change the router bits.
So it's a plunge?
Okay, this used to be a plunge, but when you put it on a router table, you take out the spring.
Right.
So I took out the spring, and I thought about these automatic lifts, and I couldn't justify the cost because I can just turn the handle, and it comes up, and then there's a micro adjustment on the router. It makes it real easy to adjust the height and to change router bits. It also has collets, so I can use 1/4 inch router bits.
Earlier, you showed one of the tops that was on a hinge and you hold it up. What would be the downside of that?
That you have to pick it up. And there's no really advantage of having access to your router. That usually you have one router dedicated to your table, and you don't change routers that often on a table. But it has handles on the side. You just crank it up, and it comes up, and it locks it, and you can change out the bits.
I was just trying to think getting the access to change the bit.
Well, it's right here. See how it comes out? It comes above the table. And you just use that wrench, and it's real easy.
I don't know if they still make I think it's brand was Router Razor, but I used it with a plunge router and it replaced some of the parts, but it was not a terribly expensive option. And, maybe 10 years ago it was $80. It was not several $100s. It has a little crank that you insert in the top, and it's worked beautifully for all the years of using it.
I've never had one, but I've used one, and I find this just as easy. Yeah, you just go and crank it up, it comes up, and then when you want it down, you just crank it down, and then there's a micro adjustment. I really like this router.
I got a question. My biggest problem is changing the speed of my router. Because it's in underneath it's in a box inside, and I've got to get my hand in there to change the speed. And that's what I really don't like that. I do have a Jessam lifter that is fantastic.
That's what I have.
And I'll tell you, you people, if you don't want to spend the money, don't. But if you ever get one, you'll never live without it. I'll tell you, they are fantastic.
Okay, issues about changing bits and changing speeds. Alan?
There's, he was talking about the motor and changing speeds. There are companies that make little motor controllers. If you got a brushless motor, you plug your router into that, and you can run it full or variable speed. And if you're turning a big bit and you've got a router that turns 22,000 RPMs, you're going to want to be able to dial it down, and that allows you to do that.
So Alan recommends an independent adjustment for speed. This particular router I have has, I think, 5 or 6 speeds. Let's go to the next slide for a minute here. Okay, this is in Milwaukee, and it's about a 2 1/4 horse. I bought this specifically dedicated for this machine. It has 2 bases. One is the rigid base, that's what I attach to the underside of the top, and the other is a plunge base. How easy is it to change from one to the other? Well, I'll show you. Excuse my posterior a minute. It's just that easy. You want to change bits, take it out, set it on top, and you can change it. Makes it real easy, pair of wrenches. Changing speeds is right here. So as far as Tracy was concerned, this would be the type to get if that speed is a concern. I just start using it at whatever speed it's set at and say, oh, that's good enough, close enough. But that's how that comes out. This particular router, we're also talking about lifts, a way to adjust the depth or height of your cut from the top so you don't have to get underneath to work with it. That's another advantage of this particular model. It comes with a wrench that goes down through the top and attaches right to the top of this. It's a coarse thread, but I've never done a job where I really had to have that much of an incremental change for the depth of cut. Looks good, close enough. But it comes with this. I did not have to buy a lift. It's all an integrated part of the router set. I'd like to say that I bought it because I like that concept. I didn't know it had it till I got the router, because I wanted it with a combination plunge and rigid base. But I thought, hey, that's neat. So questions come up. Should this particular router be used in this configuration? Some routers are not designed to be used that way. But when they bring this into it, the answer is, yeah, it's made for a table. Jack?
You had to drill a hole in your plate for that.
I think the answer is yes. Question, did I have to drill a hole in the plate for that? I think I did. So I'm a little bit off, but it slides right in. There's a rubber grommet in there as well. Keeps some of the dust out.
What brand was it?
Milwaukee. 2 1/4. If you're interested in the model number, if I can find it. 5616-20. That's the catalog. 120 volt, 13 amp, rated I think at 2 1/4 horsepower. I think Derek was telling us about horsepower ratings. I think at our last presentation for routers, take them with a grain of salt. The 1 horsepower I've got on this little Vermont American is not nearly as powerful as this one, which is not nearly as powerful as Jerry's. That's what we have. Steve, do you have a question?
Oh, I was going to ask if that crank will let you bring the router up far enough to change bits on the top.
Will the crank allow me to bring it up far enough to change bits? I haven't tried. It's just so easy to take this out from underneath and put it back in again. I don't worry about it.
Yeah, and you set that on its up, can't you? Yes.
Can you set it on the top to change the bits? Sure. Although I like it on its side because I have to use 2 hands and it's kind of awkward on a horizontal position.
Your question about lifting up the router table, the top, if you have to change router bits and you have to take the router out, maybe that's the reason for it. In mine, I never have to take the router off. just crank it up.
I have the same, not the same route, but the same setup, where you pull the switch, drop it down. So.
Ivan? I can't speak to all of them. I got a bench dog lift, but I've seen a number of other ones. And the lift and the plate is an integral part, which makes it real easy. You just open the door and pick up the router and pick everything up and set it on top if you have to, and do it. Something that the lift doesn't take care of. So it's pretty easy.
So if you get an integrated router and the top together, the whole thing comes out. Makes it easy to work with. One of the comments, I think again I made in a router presentation, I have an old 3.5 horsepower power, I believe it's a Porter cable. Anyway, I was looking, I thought, well, I'll use that for my router table. So I looked for a lift that would fit that particular motor. The dimensions, don't quote me on this, but I think my diameter on that motor of that old router was 4.5 inches. The maximum I could find was 4.25, no matter what the price, unless I made my own. And I've made a few things homemade, kind of like that, and they really don't work very well for me. It may be my design. But I decided, well, I'm going to quit trying to find something for that one, and I went with the new router. Okay. Yep, got to move it, maybe have to move it around. Rex's is stationary against the wall, but for Jerry and me, we move these around. Jerry, you've got one system.
Originally, I had this system, but with a lever, and you can't put this against the wall between two pieces of equipment. So what I did was I put a hook on it, and I had this bar. You just push down on it, you pick it up, and you can move it around. And this way, I can mount and put other pieces of equipment right against the router table. But it can be moved real easy.
Mine sits next to a small planer, and when I run a piece of wood through the planer, it comes level with the router top, and that acts as a support.
Okay, so Rex has designed his so it's an outfeed table for his thickness planer. Use the top. That works well too. And as Jerry pointed out, with mine, it has to, as you can see, it's the end of a row of machines or cabinets, because I have to be able to get to that little footstep thingy on the one end. So mine has to come into the end, whereas Jerry's can go directly between a couple cabinets. Depends on what you have and what you need to do. Alan?
If you buy those commercial bases like that, there's one particular brand I wouldn't buy, and that's that Portamate that they sell here. I purchased one of those, supposed to have capacity about 800 pounds, and I put about 475 pounds on it, and you need to go to rent a gorilla in order to move it.
So some of these are not the best. So this one, as if you can tell, I had trouble moving this. It doesn't like to move very well. And maybe you noticed that when I started to move it and stopped, the drawers kept going. That's why I'm changing out eventually to these full extensions, because they will lock in place. It's one of the disadvantages sometimes of some of these designs. Jack?
I had a good experience with a Portamate. The top of the line's good for 1,500 pounds, and it's more than adequate for that. The only problem is it tends to stick out a little bit from the base, so it's in a way.
Another consideration, as Jack points out too, is the base going to stick out in such a way you trip over it, especially if you're going to be using it? Consideration.
You've got to be able to lock it with wheels too.
You got to be able to lock it in place. This one, the way this system works, once I flip this lever up, that little caster wheel comes up and it sits down on 2 feet.
How big is your caster?
These are, I want to say about, what, 2.5 to 3 inches?
Yeah, I won't have anything on wheels in my shop if it isn't at least 5-inch wheels.
Nothing bigger than a tractor tire.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how you move it around. Oh, John.
I think an issue I've always tried to keep in mind when I'm planning shop, mine or others, regarding height, is so many of us have limited space, but we're also using router tables, drill presses, chop saws, you name it, that when they're in use, need side-to-side space. And I think if you adopt a fixed height, you can take advantage of those fixed heights. And I have my chop saw, so it's dead level with drill press when I crank it at a certain point and to the router table. And many times I've needed long pieces across it, and it's been wonderful.
John recommends getting all of your pieces of equipment the same height. Use one or the other
And
for.
put them in that one place so you can take advantage of that long layout without having to move things around.
Yep, works good. Okay, operational safety. Like with any router, you got to be careful. Watch the feed direction. And I'm going to step out on a limb here and say all router bits are made to go one direction. I'm probably wrong, but I've never seen a router bit made or designed to go other than, when you look down on the top of the router, clockwise. But remember, when you invert that router, now the bit, which is right here, is going counterclockwise. The feed direction is this way. So I feed from here to here. So watch the feed direction. There's also an issue if you use like a core box bit and you're going to be cutting in, so you're cutting on both sides. Hang on to that puppy, because if it may try to do what's called climbed cut. If I fed the other direction, if I fed this way, that's called climb cutting, because the bit now wants to bite into the material and it can yank it out of your fingers real quick. So watch that. Whoop, back up one here. Ivan.
I had one experience. I wasn't purposely trying to climb cut, but I was cutting a slot, and I needed the slot to be a little wider. And unfortunately, I moved the fence towards the bit, and I put the part down in, and I started to work just like I would do for the normal cut. And it grabbed that, it took it straight out of my hand, it sheared the bit off, as it comes shooting off the table.
Router bits can be dangerous, so that climb cut issue is there. If you watch Woodsmith Shop, they have a show on, I think, Channel 5 or PBS. They advocate using a climb cut under a specialized condition. I think Derek mentioned too, for a final cut, he puts a piece of, was it painter's tape on the edge? Then for a final cut, take the tape off and make your final cut. Makes a nice smooth cut. The Woodsmith Shop says, okay, take the final cut, but do a climb cut with it. That is, you're cutting the wrong direction, but you're taking off a minuscule amount of material. I don't know that I would recommend that, but if you watch the show, they say, okay, under that condition, that'll give you a nice smooth cut. I can't speak to it. I have not tried it intentionally, unlike Ivan here. It wasn't intentional, but it goes flying. Mike.
Freud has a brand new bid out, and you're going to die at the price because it's almost $400. But it's neutral. And it cuts the whole thing at the same time.
Oh, so Freud has a $400 bit that goes either way. It
runs neutral.
You say it runs neutral? You can go either direction?
No. You got to see this thing.
Okay.
Because as it turns, the top is doing a climb cut, the bottom is not doing a climb cut. And it's neutral.
Okay.
But it gives you a gorgeous cut.
Check with Freud for $400.
The weirdest looking bits you've ever seen.
Interesting one.
Who makes it? Freud.
I believe it's Freud. I saw it the other day and I looked at that and said, what in the world? But you look at the bit and it's engineered so from the top down it's slicing, it's giving you a climb cut. And from the bottom up it's also giving you a climb cut. But it's neutral. You can go either way. It's a spiral bit? It's not a spiral bit.
Not a spiral bit.
Okay. It's shaped like two diamonds.
Check Freud and see what they have.
Yeah, we're looking at it on the internet, but I think it was Freud.
Steve.
I was going to ask you in terms of working without a fence, when you're doing work like this, isn't there a little pin or a steel dowel or something that fits into the table that helps you get started? Yeah.
Steve has the question. I'm working without a fence in this configuration. There is a pin, a matter of fact, it's here in the drawer, that fits into a pre-drilled hole somewhere in here. And that pin allows you a pivot point. So you can actually hold it against that pivot point instead of trying to come into the bit and have it jerk, which is what happened here. I was not using a pivot point. Alan?
I've got a question on it. On your using the pivot point, at what length piece running through the router should you consider using the pivot point?
Question is,
the longer it is, obviously, the easier it is not to use have to use a pivot point. But as your wood shortens up in length, it gets to a point you have to have it. And what I'm asking from a safety standpoint, and maybe Mike or you can answer that, what length should you consider using that pivot point?
I don't have an answer for specifics, but if you look down here, I put it in, there's sawdust in the hole right now, so it doesn't seat all the way. But there's that pivot pin. And it's about 2 inches from the center of where the bit would be, and this is per the manufacturer. So it's just sitting right here. And if you put your stock into it, you've got another way to hang on to it. So I pointed out, I was not using it with this. I included this in one of the newsletters a year or so ago. These are rockers. And look at the grain direction up here. That's one of the reasons it broke, and it went in a hurry. It said hi, and I had pieces flying across the shop. Luckily, I was smart enough to use some pads so my fingers weren't in the way. I was also probably taking too big of a bite around that corner. I had not machined off enough of the walnut to solve that problem. John?
I think this is pretty much a basic for most people, but I learned years ago that when I'm using a template and cutting just to a line on this, I remove as much waste as I possibly can before I do my final cut. And to a template, if I have more than 1/8 of an inch of waste outside the template, I stop and trim it off, and I get a much better cut in the end.
What John's talking about here is this amount of material left to be cut off. I probably should cut off a little bit more than that. Derek?
It's not the batteries in the mic. I'll just hold on a second. I agree with John, and a comment on both the pin question and how much you're taking off. You can use a bearing guided bit recessed in your fence, and that can be a safe way to get to that final pass. If you're not using the pin, or even if you are, you may find that having most of the bit behind the face of your fence will be safer and give you more control.
Gail?
Yeah, addressing that stop there. You don't want a piece any smaller than the I would say at least half an inch more than the distance between the outside diameter of that stop and your router bed.
Okay,
it'll suck it into the router bed.
What Gail is saying is that if this distance from the pin to the center of the bit is 2 inches, don't have anything shorter than 3.
No, not to the center, to the edge of the bit.
Oh, edge of it, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, be careful about length of pieces.
What I do is I got a different set of bearings, and I change out the bearings and take a light cut, and then come back a second time with the pattern.
Yep. Yeah, put bearings on it with different size bearings, and that gives you different cuts. John? Oh, okay. Shucks, I thought you had a question. So watch the grain direction. Support pads, sticks. Keep your fingers out of there. It's an important issue. And when you get it done, enjoy what you done did. It may cost you $1,000 or less, depending on how you make this. Make it for yourself. Jerry, anything more to add?
No, that's about
Pretty much it. Don't go away yet. By the way, that's a sunset from where we live. Kind of neat. And while we're talking show and tell, I added this if we had time. We do a little bit. I'll go another 5 minutes here and then I'll be through. About a year and a half ago, our grandson and his wife were expecting our first great-grandson, as it turned out. And I looked at that, and that's out of Wood Magazine. And they live in northern Colorado. We go up there 4 or 5 times a year. So I asked him, I said, I got 2 questions for you. 2 questions. First of all, showed him the picture. I said, are you interested in this? If you are, would you use it? Because I can't see spending the time, money's not too much of an issue with this, but it takes a lot of time to make a nanny rocker. It's a rocking chair and a cradle all in one, and they said yes. So I said, okay. So both kids are big kids. The width of that chair for that little nanny there is probably 20 inches. So I thought, I got to go 24. First thing I did, I bought the mattress pad for the cradle and built the cradle to fit the pad. That works best. In addition to that, I said, okay, what happens when the kid outgrows it? Now what do? I bolted the cradle on with some T-nuts and some hex head bolts and made a second chair. When the kid outgrew it, and he has now, they take the cradle off, put the chair in place, now you have a dual rocker. I'm like Tim the Toolman Taylor. I can't take something just out of the box and deal with it. I got to improve it. And I also did one other thing. Knowing these are big kids, I put in a center rocker, a third one, because the original didn't have it. So that's one of my show and tells. Then what materials? 3/4 inch Baltic birch, that's those 5-foot square sheets. Why they make them 5 foot, I don't know. I haven't been able to find that out yet. And walnut. And if you look, I don't know if you can tell them very well or not, that rocker right down at the bottom, that's one of those that broke. And there are 6 of those because they are paired together. So the width is 3.5 inches. And although it looks a little wiggly, it's very rigid. I was very happy when that worked out that way. One of the problems, getting it in the door. You set it up on edge, and because of the length of those rockers, they had one heck of a time getting it in the house. But that wasn't my problem. We got a second great-grandson that came along earlier this year, so I thought, okay, what do I make for him or his mama? So I made this chest of drawers. It has a changing table on top, which also is bolted on. So when you're through with the changing table, you set it to one side. Now you've got a chest of drawers. But in addition to that, on the sides, there's a box that I built for the baking soda and that's baby powder and baby oil for the kid. And that box either fits on the right side or left side. When you're through with that, you take it off because it's on keyhole slots. And then, as you can see in the bottom, and then there's a decorative strip, and 2 of them that go on each side. So you're through with the box, now you got this. So that's my show and tell, that's what I'm sticking to.
I just have one question on the previous slide. I've always been taught that on drawers, multi-drawer, any kind of a piece of furniture or roll around, that you can't open all the drawers at the same time for safety.
There's an issue, as John points out. Open all the drawers at the same time, there might be a possibility he's falling over. There are furniture manufacturers now that supply a strap that goes on the back of that, and you find your stud, put the screw the strap into the stud in the wall, and somehow the strap attaches to the back to prevent that. Same thing applies with 4 or 5 drawer file cabinets, 1 drawer at a time. I just opened those up, there's nothing in them. Full extension drawer slides, I did not screw up the dimension on the width on those. Okay, anything else? Okay? We're done. Okay.